When Jen awoke on a crisp May morning to the voice of her mother calling her for breakfast, she rose with a mixture of dread of facing the current quarantine situation, a sense of hunger because it was breakfast time and she was ready, and that sort of dull sense of drudgery of continuing to sit in quarantine. When she arrived at breakfast, her family, mom, his name is Catherine, dad, her little brother Charlie, the four of them sat to breakfast and she ate her Thomas's English muffin. She liked it the same way. A little butter, a little cinnamon and sugar. It was her favorite breakfast. As Jennifer munched on her Thomas's bagel, she looked around and noticed that her mother was staring at her rather intently, with a big smile on her face. And Jen just sort of glowered at her and said, "What?" Jen's mother says, "I have big news. Your father and I have decided that we are going on a cruise." Jen sort of rolled her eyes and said, "Nobody's going on a cruise, Mom. It's coronavirus. Like, you can't do that. It's not safe." And Catherine said, "The prices are dirt cheap. There's nobody on these boats. And we are leaving tomorrow on a 7-day Caribbean cruise. We're flying to Miami tonight, and the boat sets sail tomorrow." Jen could not believe this news. She said, "Can this be real? Who's going to be on this boat?" In her mind, swirling, she was thinking about her other seventh grade friends and how they were trapped at home. And she had a mixture of anticipation of being able to get out of the house and go somewhere, a mixture of fear at being on a boat in the middle of the coronavirus epidemic, but the sense of excitement sort of overpowered her sense of fear, and she started to get excited. And Charlie was over the moon. Charlie, a mere 7 years old, was already packed. Jen, being 13 and being more of the sleepy, dozy teenager type, sort of made her way upstairs and started to thinking about what she was going to bring on this cruise and how on earth could they leave tonight from Miami and cruise the Caribbean. She was sort of excited and frightened all at the same time. And so begins our next story. The family arrived in Miami late on that Thursday evening. They were the only ones on the airplane. They all had masks on and gloves and did plenty of social distancing. There was barely no one at security. Didn't have to take their shoes off to go through security. They checked dad's and mom's ID. They boarded that Southwest flight and were in Miami that night. They slept in a hotel room. Jen and Charlie in one room, mom and dad in the other. It was a fairly uneventful evening. Jen was frantically texting with her friends, some of whom were very excited for her, some of whom seemed very nervous that she was actually getting on a cruise ship. But now Jen was sort of excited. She was committed. The family had flown out. She was able to pack. And they arrive at the dock the following day. Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. The Crystal ship is what it was called, the Crystal. And they were one of only very few passengers. Jen was sort of amazed that this boat was even sailing with so few people. She didn't see many passengers as they checked in. They were able to board and go to the lobby where there were several crewmen. Everyone was in masks and gloves. And she first set eyes on a cabin steward, an attendant, if you will. His name was Stuart. On his name tag, you could see it said Stuart. And Stuart looked at her and gave her this sort of half-hearted smile. She didn't think much of it as she wandered about, looking at the various shops and parts of the cruise ship. Most of the shops were still closed. It seemed to be just a lot of people doing paperwork. Charlie ran off to find the game room. Mom and Dad were filling out forms, and Jen was free to sort of explore the lobby. After about an hour, they were able to go to their rooms. Their bags had been delivered. Charlie and Jen would be staying in a cabin next to Mom and Dad. And she heard, sort of blaring over the loudspeaker, that there would be a lifeboat drill within the hour and that she should have her life vest ready to go. Her mother, Catherine, asked her if she would help Charlie and to make sure that Charlie was around for the lifeboat drill. As she wandered the ship, she noticed it looked sort of drab, like it hadn't been maintained very well. It seemed to be dirty. There seemed to be moisture, mildew. It didn't look like any cruise ship she'd ever heard about. She'd only ever been on one cruise when she was 10 with her parents, also to the Caribbean. This did not look like the ship that she had sailed on before. Something felt wrong. Jen could tell that something about this ship was just not quite right. It was then that she passed Stuart again, the cabin attendant, and he appeared to be sweeping the rug, which sort of alarmed her. As she looked at him and walked by, he cast his eyes down immediately and looked away. As she walked by, she turned and looked over her shoulder to see him looking at her with this vague, sort of sad look in the eyes. She didn't think much of it other than he was a little creepy, and she kept going. She decided she was going to check out the game room that Charlie had been so excitedly talking about. As Jen made her way to the game room, her sense of fear began to build. Something about this ship wasn't quite right. She could feel something was off. Her fears were first confirmed when she entered the game room. It looked as though no one had been in this game room for years. The arcade games were broken. There was dust and dirt on the floor, and one of the windows was broken. As she examined the room, she turned and saw that the cabin attendant, Stuart, had followed her. He looked sort of sad and melancholy as he stood outside the broken door of the game room and said, "You shouldn't be here." She said, "What's happening? What's going on in this place?" And he said, "You need to get back to your cabin. If you didn't see it, it isn't real." This ends chapter 1, Sea of Evil. Message me if you got this and tell me what you think so far.